Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to tell you about this sword right here. It is an Albion Soldat. At least I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a messer from Albion. It's very cool, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Hopefully you're interested because you clicked the video, and hopefully I titled it correctly. Anyway, disclaimers. This is on loan from sword friend Ian. It's his property. I have to return it. I'm not going to abuse the sword, but I do have the go-ahead to put it through some paces anyway. But do know that I didn't spend any money on it, and I have to return it, so keep that in mind. Also know that sword friend Ian says that his swords are not safe queens, so if you see small imperfections, things like that, do know that he has used the sword, and those may not be representative of what you would expect to get if you were to buy one new. The other bit, which will be painfully obvious as you see me move it around, is that I don't study martial systems involving messers. So I do study a bit of swordsmanship. It's not historic European martial arts. So anyway, take my swinging and ramblings and all that stuff with the context that I'm a novice in mind. So anyway, on with the review. I start with the pommel, the end cap, this bit right here. In this case, I'm going to talk a little bit about the construction method too. Sword friend Ian has lent me some messers, and I've gotten to see a few different ways these can be constructed. Sometimes there's scales. There's a few different methods of construction anyway, and this one just appears to be a metal ball of some kind, though it's not a ball, and there is a little peen sticking out the end that I can make out in just the right light. It's been sanded over. You don't feel it, you don't see it, but I can make out that there is a peen there that's been hammered and sanded down. The finish quality is really quite nice, but this is one ball with the tang bits slotted in. I'm assuming that there is a little peen running, or off a little bit running off the tang down here that is slotted in up on the top here and then runs through, which is then compressed down and sand finished. The pommel, in terms of shape, it's a good job. I mean, functionally, it has this little swoop to keep your fingers on. It does that job really well. I didn't feel myself losing it if I go and grip the pommel, giving myself a little bit of reach. Nothing bites in. The edges don't have any hot spots. From a user perspective, it's pretty comfortable. From an aesthetic perspective, it also has just a little bit of detail, enough to kind of make it nice without going overboard. All the spots that contact your hand are pretty smooth to the touch, but there's also some little detailing in here that might be uncomfortable, but my hand doesn't really ever touch it. Honestly, if it does, it doesn't bite in either. What I do see as well is there's a little bit of dimension. Some of the edges taper in, but there's also some asymmetry here, and this is the first Albion that I've seen that has as much amateurishness, if you will. I want to kind of preface that Albion usually makes European swords. They do an exemplary job with grips and handles and all sorts of stuff, and there's a lot of really great things on here. But there's also some stuff that I think really misses the well, typically what you expect when you hear the word Albion. And here, the lines on the pommel are the first indicator that they just don't swoop and follow the same symmetry that Albion is typically known for. Usually they're not perfect, but they're a lot closer to it than their competitors. And here I can notice that some angles are just steeper than others on the pommel area, which is odd and something a little bit off-putting, unexpected, because typically Albion, like I said, is right on symmetrical. If you're looking for that kind of very, very pristine, refined kind of symmetry on a sword, whether or not it was present in history is a different question. If that's what you like to see on your products, that's what Albion is often regarded for, and it's a little absent here, starting with the pommel area. Now this has some tool markings, some kind of rough finish on it, but I'm gonna say that that's probably sword friend Ian. Some sides are a little more worn than others, but I don't think that the grind lines on the pommel are something that sword friend Ian did or is due to his wear. If I move up to the grip here, well, I do want to point out first, just in terms of how it functions, the little pommel area, I don't notice in the grip when I'm swinging it around that one side has a slightly steeper angle than the other. The grip as well, I don't notice any issues. It feels comfortable. It indexes well. It does feel a little bit small, and I can turn it as well. So one thing I like to do is hold the grip in one hand, kind of clench down, and try to turn it. And if I can push the quillion and turn the grip, and my hand will have a tight grip on it. What that tells me is if I strike something hard, I'm going to be adjusting my grip quite a bit, kind of futzing with it. It tends to come off alignment. I'll lose my index and have to find it again. It'll roll in my hand if I encounter some sort of hard target. So this will do that. It's a little slippery, despite the fact that it has kind of a nice octagonal section to it, and there's ridges that really help me index and feel like it locks in. It's still a little bit on the slippery side. The other bit to note about the grips is the scales have spots where I can get a fingernail in. And again, I don't think that this is what sword friend Ian did, or it's due to wear or age on his part. It just looks like manufacturing misses. Now, scales, we've all probably seen $30 to $50 knives come from all over the world that have scales that are flush and clean. And so the fact that we have a $1,200 sword here that has scales that I can get a fingernail between, that water could get in, that moisture could collect, that rust could kind of propagate is, I think, problematic and something really unbecoming of Albion. I think the scales in particular could have been better done. So my main complaint is obviously that I can kind of fit a fingernail and there's some gaps around the scales, but there's some other cool stuff about the grip. The pins here, they're hollow, they're really well fit. I like that I can see through them. I think they aesthetically match well with the rest of the handle. I like the way they're fit, and they also feel relatively smooth to the touch. They don't rise wood. Well, if you use abrasives on it, a lot of times the wood diminishes quicker than the metal does, and it's hard to get them even. This feels pretty smooth to the touch. There's no hot spots or anything like that. I've mentioned that there's no hot spots on the grip, but it also feels reasonably flush, which is a tough thing to do, and I'm glad to see that it was pretty well executed here. And one other interesting thing is that the tang is sloped. It's tapered, and I remember talking to Adam from Lance Connect Emporium, and he noted that this was a historic facet of some of the messers that he would see, is that the tang had some taper to it. So here the spine is wider than the edge side of the tang. That likely makes the scales harder to fit on, but nevertheless I still expect them to be well executed on a $1,200 sword. Still, anyway, just an interesting facet that the tang does appear to have some taper to it. Also, the way the tang lines in, I can make out that it is perfectly flush along the spine, but the way the kind of key slot locks into the pommel on the front, there's again a space in there where moisture could collect, where the tang slots into the pommel, and there's just an ever so slight gap there. But again, I would hope that it would be kind of uniform on all sides, and that I wouldn't see this, that it would be as smooth as it is on this side, I suppose I should say. Now, moving up to the crossguard, again, I'm going to talk a little bit about the construction methodology here. The crossguard, I can make out kind of the shoulders of the blade on the bottom here. Now, I don't know if the blade has some shoulders that rest inside the cross or not. It looks like they don't, and it's slotted up from the top, and then the nagel goes through. I don't see any indication of a peen that goes through. I'm assuming it's there, but no matter what kind of light or trickery I have, I can't make it out. Doesn't mean it's not there. It may just be very well finished. I want to speculate that the nagel goes all the way through. I don't see the indicator of a peen on this side. Though, again, totally could be there because it's likely made out of the same material. The crossguard, very handsome in shape, but again, this construction, I can see the shoulders of the blade. It looks like it's slid on, and a nagel is punched through. And where I have some concern around this is that, again, from talking to the folks at Lance Connect Emporium, their crossguards have this kind of percussive fit look to them. There's a lot of hammer marks on their pieces, and they've mentioned that, you know, when the blade is slid up from the bottom, if you're using your quillins for their intended purpose, there's got to be some sort of friction fit here. So my concern would be, how well is this going to hold up if you're using your quillins for their intended purpose? If they take a beating, is it going to throw off the grip? Because basically what's holding it on are the scales, the wood bits here, and this pin, the nagel that goes through. The shoulders aren't offering the same level of support that they would on a different constructed kind of sword, or one that had a little bit more compression around the hilt area. The rest of the hilt, though, the lines are very clean. The transition to the blade up here, the slot that is very well fit. There's very minimal gap around it. That's something you expect to see and that I really love to see from Albion. And other facets of the grip, it has these octagonal quillions that come out with a little piping around, or a little groove around the outside edge. Again, just a little bit of ornamentation, a little bit of detail, very well executed, very clean. Some errant kind of brush marks and things like that could be there from Sword Friend Ian's wear and usage. That nagel, though, if I look at this, it doesn't look like it's pushed on as far as it could be. Again, I can make out a little bit of a gap here. It's small, but the nagel runs through. It's very well secured, and I'm confident that it's actually very well secured. This nagel was punching through the UPS box that Sword Friend Ian sent it to me in, or whether a different messer was. But UPS kicked this all the way here from Sword Friend Ian's house. This nagel survived, where others that he sent me, other messers, did not. So this does appear very well secured. At the same time, though, it does look like a spot where moisture could collect and things like that. The gap is just a little bit bigger than I think it could be, and I was hoping for more from Albion. The same is true around the bottom here. There are just areas where the gap is a little bit more than I would have expected. Apart from that, I think the handle is very handsome. This one is in the Devil Grip variety. Sword Friend Ian is a lefty, so it's a left-handed variety messer. Nice that option is available. And I think, again, handle-wise, it's handsome, simple, elegant. It does all the things I would like to see from an Albion, except there's some grips and finish quality that I think is just beneath the quality of the name. Before moving on to the blade itself, I'll talk briefly about the scabbard from Todd stuff. It fits. Most of the rattle comes from the other buckles and things. If I hold them still, you don't hear so much rattle. It's very leather sounding though. It's turning into like an ASMR video. It's just the sounds of leather creaking are abundant on this. I can't hold it and talk well. It doesn't fall out easily when I turn it upside down, but it pretty much does come out. I don't know what the tension was like when it arrived. It may have loosened up given the usage that Sword for Ian has put it through. But if usage is what it's seen, it's overall held up well, and I think the scratches and imperfections that I see on the scabbard add some character, and overall it's thin, it's nice, and I really like the work that Todd stuff has done here. The stitching along the back is pretty prominent, and it doesn't have like a lot of taper and profile this way, but overall it's certainly a handsome scabbard. The belt system doesn't fit me particularly well, but I believe it needs some adjusting, and with some adjustment I think it would hang itself right. I don't want to touch Sword for Ian settings because this looks hard to put back, but I think I saw a video from Todd some time ago about how to adjust these. I'm just not going to. In any case, I think it could also be shimmed in such a way that if I wanted the retention to be different, that could be improved without too much difficulty. I'm somewhat familiar with that on the Japanese side of swords. You can hear it rattles a little bit at the mouth, but I mean the blade has a profile where that almost seems a requirement. The thing I don't like about the scabbard is this chape area down here, and it's really that this front edge makes this big hook area here. Now, I tend to be clumsy when I wear these things around, and if there's a spot that a thing can catch and pull a tablecloth down or something like that, I'm going to find it. This thing, the way it hangs, being loose and kind of flopping about, I'd be concerned about this. I think a lot of people would walk around in like a Ren fair or have some sort of garb or something like that they might actually use a scabbard like this for, apart from wall art. And having hooks like this is something I guess I don't like to see. It'd be nice if it were clamped down a little bit and at least had the same relief that this side does. But the fact that it sticks out a couple extra millimeters, it's not the end of the world, but it also it pulls away a lot of the what I would call good on the scabbard. Other bits, there's nice rivets. The quality of leather seems very nice, and the scabbard overall is really well executed. I think it's a great fit. I think it also is handsome. It's really just that shape and that little hook sticking out at the end that sour me on it a bit. All right, the blade, the pointy stabby part. Well, lots of stuff is pretty cool about this. This is also pretty sharp. I did take a ceramic stone and just kind of brushed it along the edge, and it seems to have a very, very keen edge. I thought it cut reasonably well, though not as well as I expected, given how good the edge feels, and I don't know if I just can't get over the devil grip or if it's unfamiliar to me, but I didn't, for the profile, I really expected this to be an exemplary cutter, and I would say it was more average, and that could certainly be because of my skill. It has the profile to be an absolutely amazing cutter. I just didn't see really, really amazing results. I'll probably go out and test it again. Maybe I'll overlay some footage that will contradict the things that I'm saying, but at present, with the testing that I've currently done, I didn't find it to be terribly compelling as a cutter. I think it's really more me than the sword, though. This back third that's sharpened is also reasonably sharp. It has a cool cutting profile to it. I did try smacking some things, just reversing my grip and using the sword the other way. I had similar results in cutting. It didn't really do much. Thrusting, this was a very effective thruster. I feel like I have a lot of tip control. Dynamically, it feels like it's stout in the cut and effective in the thrust. It's a really, really compelling and nice shape. The Albion, though, doesn't have much flavor other than profile in this dimension. It's got a little bit of kind of character towards the tip, but otherwise it's just a single bevel that runs down with no fullering, and I think that's another missed opportunity. I know that the fullering adds cost and time and complexity, but having seen some of the other messers from Sword for Ian's collection, the fullers I think really add a lot to the aesthetics, and I could just imagine a gradual 3 different fullers like I saw in the monster messer from Sword for Ian, but some kind of fullering on here I think would at least add some visual elegance to the blade that I think is missing, at least to my eye. Anyway, the blade itself, I understand historically accurate, doesn't have to have fullers. I think it's a missed opportunity. I would like to see, maybe one running up the back, and to me, the gradual 3 reducing in size fullers I think would be really, really cool on this one. Just a thought. Anyway, that's kind of something that I think is missing, though. As I look at the other swords that are available, there's not a huge amount that are in the $1,200 price category from mass production places. Lance Connect Emporium is the one that I have the closest idea of, and the Landsknecht Emporium has way more kind of crudeness around the fit and finish, but there's also some rough spots around Albion that for $1,200 I would have thought would have been addressed. Messers may just be harder to make, and there may be more opportunity for gaps and failure points and things like that. In any respect, I will include specifications, measurements, weapon dynamics, all of that in the description down below if you're interested in those properties. From a movement standpoint, though, as I mentioned, this is a very fluid, nice, easy, fun sword to move around. It didn't cut as well as I expected, and to talk a little bit about the cutting side of things, since my thoughts on dynamics, given that I've provided measurements and don't study any of the martial aspects using this sword, are probably not worth very much. It's a fun sword to move around, though. It's like a home defense weapon. I think this is also about the right size and shape to just kind of instantly feel comfortable with, and I do get that sensation from this sword, despite the fact that I wasn't terribly good at cutting with it. Anyway, on that note, pool noodles, water bottles, and some branches and things like that are what I decided to cut. The pool noodles would cut if I got the right angle, but I really thought that they would just pop apart, and that was not the case while I was cutting with this sword. It has an edge to do it. It has the profile to do it. It just wasn't what I was able to really consistently land with it, which kind of surprised me. I was thinking that was what was going to happen, and I couldn't get it to happen consistently. Water bottles as well, I kind of batted some around. In some cases it cut, but I didn't have the best luck cutting water bottles. It is a very durable sword, though. I did whack into one of the tops of the water bottles, and I nicked the cap. It's around the harder edge of the spine. I see absolutely no edge deformation. The edge didn't lose its kind of razor spot. It didn't deform, it didn't roll. It comes to a very, very fine edge, but I see no indication that I gave it a somewhat abusive cut, debatably. Branches and the like as well. These are freshly cut branches. My neighbor downed a tree in the backyard. I was able to go and collect some fresh green branches, so they're not terribly hard. I think it's a cottonwood tree as well. And I did several kind of aggressive cuts into a cottonwood branch. And in each case, it severed the branches pretty quickly. Again, not as clean and nice as some of what I was expecting. In some cases, it broke it apart. And either way, it moved through it, and it cut well. And it didn't provide a lot of shake or vibration in my hand. It was a comfortable experience to do. It just didn't perform as well as I thought it would. Anyway, that was my experience cutting. Overall, it was fun. It was easy to get the edge roughly where I wanted it to, but I could tell just something is missing for me. I'm not cutting as well as I think this sword is capable of cutting. Something was just off for me. I didn't notice it rolling in my hand. I didn't notice vibrations. The sword feels very sharp to the touch. I think it's capable of cutting. I just think it needs a different hand to do it. In any case, those are my thoughts. That's the meat and potatoes of the review. Hopefully, what I've shared has been helpful, interesting, and given you some idea if this is worth your $1,200 for the sword, and then more for the scabbard if you want that. Details on pricing and what they are and those options, again, will be in the description down below. It's time for me to answer the question, though, do I personally think it's worth it or not? And at $1,200, I'm going to say no. I like the sword. I like that it's an Albion Messer. I like the dynamics, how it feels in my hands. There's really a lot to love about the sword. But there's also some pieces missing on this one that I just haven't felt the same way about with other Albions, and that's interesting. There's kind of misses, I think, on the quality of assembly on this particular one. Whether or not that flows through onto other Messers like this from Albion, I don't know, but this one example looks like there's some opportunities for improvement on Albion's side from a construction perspective. The Quillians and stuff, I haven't really ever doubted Albion's ability to be functional as a sword and have good quillings, but this construction method, I don't know. It makes me curious. It makes me want to see a test to see how well this holds up in contrast to some of their other pieces. But I don't know. I have some doubt about it. The results of the sword in my hand were not great, but it does feel excellent in my hand. But it's also just, it lacks some panache on the blade. I really like the profile this way, but I think there's some missed opportunity in some fullering that would really blend well with the sword itself. And so there's just too many little things and too big a price tag for those missing little things in my mind. It's still a quality sword. It's still awesome. It still feels great. It still has a lot of awesome hallmarks and quality that you would expect to see from Albion, but I think there's also some bits on this particular one that are missing. So to me, I would say no. In this case, I don't believe it is. I would rather have something cheaper from Landsknecht Emporium that albeit would be a little bit more crude, but those have had very good dynamic properties as well that I've also really, really enjoyed. I've had equal struggles in cutting with them. The edge profiles have not been as good, but there's been some fullering and some, I don't know, some charm to them aesthetically that I feel like is missing on this one, and the price tag is a little bit more approachable. So in that case, I think I would probably go that direction over the Albion if I were looking for a messer, or at least one like this. That is not to say it is bad, though. If you like Albion stuff, I don't think you'll be terribly disappointed with this, and hopefully yours doesn't come with the same imperfections that Swordfriend Ian's did. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Hopefully it's been helpful. That's really all I have. I do want to offer a special thanks as well, again, to Swordfriend Ian. His donation and patronage of messers have colored my worldview of them, and in fairness, I wasn't terribly interested in messers prior to Swordfriend Ian sending me some to play with and being very patient with me as I explored them. Hopefully you all enjoy his patience and patronage as well, because I've gotten to bring all of you along that journey as well. And I don't think I wouldn't have had the opportunity without him. So tip of my hat to Swordfriend Ian. Hopefully you have enjoyed his generosity as well. Like I said, this one is personally a no for me, but at the same time I recognize its benefits, and hopefully the video helped you decide for yourself. Anyway, that's all I've got. Cheers, and thanks for watching.